Some things that are happening around the world are difficult to connect. What do American forum users who screwed over large financial funds for $13 billion have in common with an angry mob of Indians slaying other people? The internet. But the internet is just a tool, and each society uses it differently based on its own culture, needs, and struggle. Sit back, it's gonna be interesting. This is the story of how memesters joined forces to laugh in the face of the financial world, earning millions of dollars along the way and, most importantly, snatching $13 billion from investment funds. It all started with a Reddit user with a hilarious nickname, Deep Fucking Value, which we are going to shorten to DFV for convenience. By the way, his image fits the spirit of our times perfectly. This is what he looks like. In 2019, for his own reasons, he had gained a lot of trust in GameStop, a company that sells consoles and computer games offline. For obvious reasons, it was headed for bankruptcy. Who buys games in malls today anyway? Since 2007, its shares have been slowly bleeding, getting closer to zero. But our hero DFV, who was in his early 30s, decided to invest $50,000 in this dying company. Either he was struck with nostalgia, or he wanted to save the brand that had become obsolete but felt warm and fuzzy. Either way, he started posting the results of his investments. And here we will make a small side note. To save time and to keep things simple, we will not cover how call and put options work and what a short squeeze is. After all, this video is not focused on stock exchange instruments. We're going to dumb it down to a simple betting concept. Someone bets on the growth of the company, someone believes in its fall, and others place their bets on sports, football, or tennis. Guessing the trend correctly will earn you money, but if you are wrong, you will lose it. And this whole thing took place on a subreddit called Wall Street Bets. So, when DFV began to post his bets on growth, other users mocked him. "Good luck getting rid of those shares. No one's gonna buy it. Sell it right now. You're burning your money," etc. This guy stood his ground even when the stock fell to $4 apiece. But as time went on, DFV began to turn from a madman into a hero. It was at that time that the stock market, contrary to expectations, entered a phase of rapid growth. The subreddit saw an influx of new users who wanted to have the same returns as Tesla. And somewhere in September 2020, when GameStop's share price rose from $5 to $10, doubling in a month, the attention of Redditors turned to our hero and his posts. And the rest is history. $50,000 were turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars and then into millions. So the hype train started rolling from the rags station to the station of riches, and everyone wanted to jump aboard, but it wasn't just about greed. In this story, a bunch of internet nerds with $1,000 to spare went out to fight against the suits with millions. The thing is that large hedge funds were betting on the fall of GameStop's stock price, and they were correct from a common sense perspective. Objectively, GameStop was a company that belonged to the last century. Nobody cares about offline anymore. But people perceived it as a battle between David and Goliath, the poor and the rich, the working class and the bourgeoisie, although I'm not sure about the latter. Eventually, one company of suits operating behind the scenes, Citron Research, made a tweet. "We're going to host a live stream and explain why ordinary investors will suck in this game of poker. The shares of that GameStop of yours will drop down to $20. In the end, this further provoked the guys from Reddit and they continued to bet on the rise. The stocks flew up and the arrogant suits were forced to close their positions at $90 per share, fixing huge losses. The funny thing is that after all that, Citron Research, which had been giving advice to bet on the fall of dying businesses for the last 20 years, stopped doing so, as not to provoke Redditors to act against their forecasts. Although not long before that, those Redditors were supposed to suck in this game. As a result, these suckers changed the 20-year-old strategy of a large financial company. At the end of this story, the largest hedge funds that had bet on a fall lost a lot of money. It was estimated to be around $13 billion. One of the largest was Melvin Capital. Before the GameStop madness, it had $12.5 billion in assets, which later shrunk into $6 billion. The initiator of this flash mob himself, DFV, whose real name is Keith Gill, went down in history and now has somewhere between $17 and $40 million. It depends on the price of the shares he holds at any given time. We're going to show you his last post at the time of making this video. When you're watching it, he might have 1 million or 100. Regulators and hedge funds spectacularly shat their pants after it turned out that Redditors could transform the market into a financial pyramid that swells in a month and bursts in a week. They are trying to somehow limit this possibility by following the forum posts, etc. Hell, I would also feel tight if I were them, because the number of users on the Wall Street Bets subreddit has grown more than 10 times over the year. There are now about 10 million of them. 10 million people who are ready to inflate the price of shares, driven by greed and a fierce desire to screw over the Wall Street moneybags who are betting on the fall. Even if only a tenth of them are active and they can put down $1,000, it means they can amass $1 billion in a coordinated manner. And judging by recent screenshots, there are quite a few much richer users. And this is our new reality. A large capitalist bets on a decline, and then an army of Redditors shows up and screws him over for a few billions. Leave this video a dislike if you have a few billions. The story turned out to be so epic that there has already been a book published about it, and 2 studios bought the rights for a movie adaptation. Politicians and the richest capitalists now have to think about how to fight the guys from Reddit who orchestrate the inflating of stocks just for fun. There were also similar cases with other stocks, although the achieved growth wasn't so striking. There were also attempts to inflate the meme currency, Dogecoin. Its price went up 10 times. If you didn't know, this is the most memetic cryptocurrency in the world. The attempt to drive up Dogecoin price, although successful, was very fleeting. The growth lasted a little over a week. It was a far cry from GameStop's case, because what drove the success of GameStop was the idea of a fight between ordinary guys and reptilians. Dogecoin was put out there just to generate some lulz, but it wasn't bad either. But don't get overwhelmed by the romanticism of this story. Yes, it all started with one hero whom no one believed. Yes, people united and beat the behind-the-scenes moneybags. But how many of those ordinary guys got lured into it by the call of easy profit and lost huge money? Here are some screenshots posted by a dude who ran his deposit up to almost $2 million and ended up with a loss of $250,000 according to his statements. Or take the story of 25-year-old Salvador Vergara, who took out a $20,000 loan to make some money. He bought some shares at $234 a piece. I thought it could go up to $1,000. I really believed in that hype, which was an awful thing to do. Then the stock crashed. By the way, he's still holding on to them, so currently he is in the red by about $10,000, and he also has to pay interest on the loan. Here is another remark. Since the time of writing this text, the shares went up, so I hope Mr. Vergara managed to make a profit, or at least got even. It's important not to forget about survivorship bias. We only hear amazing success stories of how ordinary internet dwellers made it big. But don't forget that the price reached $340 and went down afterward, which means that there were those who bought in at $340, and you can only imagine what kind of losses they suffered when the price crashed down to $60. Remember I told you not to romanticize what happened? So this story is not only about the battle between David and Goliath. Another Goliath fought on the side of David. The Senvest hedge fund also made money on the rally of Redditors. Before it all went down, the fund had bought GameStop shares, hoping that the company could transition its business online. So they held their shares throughout all the hype. And around the time when Elon Musk posted his supportive tweet, they decided to exit. Thus, the hedge fund made $700 million thanks to Redditors. And that's not all, there are cases when the same moneybags won millions from flash mobs on the internet. So, as usual, nothing is perfect. This is not exactly a story about how poor users fought against fat cats solely to teach them a lesson. Each side of the barricades had both types of players, common users and hedge funds. Their goals were also different. Some were in it for the idea, and others were driven by greed. But what really cannot be denied is that this was made possible thanks to the internet. The GameStop story is not over because the key result of it is this figure. This is how many people entered the Wall Street Bets subreddit. Millions of people who have seen outstanding earnings with their own eyes will try to repeat the success. After all, why study analysis and keep track of the news if you could just inflate the asset in a coordinated manner and make some cash, while also emptying billion-dollar wallets of reptilians on the way? It all raises the question, should such Reddit raids aimed at making a quick buck be regulated? Are these forays bad for the stock market? Or is it vice versa? Such a platform like Reddit balances the machinations of the behind-the-scenes reptilians who have been cheating on the market and making outrageous profits. Be that as it may, the internet is still a powerful tool for coordinated actions. And very soon we're going to take a trip to India. In that story, it was not the money of ordinary people and millionaires in suits that was at stake, but human lives. We'll be right back. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. And I'm Boney Wright.